All right, welcome everybody. Mike Hamilton here. I will be the host and master of ceremonies here for this webinar today. If this is your first webinar with us, welcome. If you've been to our previous webinars, then welcome back. Now, today we're going to be having a subject that's really timely for the recent release of MadCap Flare with all of its new e-learning functionality. The title of today's webinar is The Blended Learning Model and MadCap Flare. And here to present this for us is Kylie Hughes, a professional instructional designer with over a decade of experience. And I will be honest, my career started out as an instructional designer, but I haven't done that in so long. I'm sure I need to knock some rust off. So I'm looking forward to this as well. Now, before I turn it over to Kylie so she can begin, I do have a couple of announcements, a couple of housekeeping items. So before everybody asks, yes, this webinar is being recorded. Anybody who signed up for it, even if they're not attending live, will be receiving an email with a link to the recorded version. So if you want to share it with colleagues, coworkers, that will be made available. Now, it might take us a little time. Usually it's kind of a next day thing. It probably won't be posted today, but probably tomorrow, but that will be available. And also, we are expecting a large group today. Because of that, all of your phones, all of your microphones are on mute. That is to protect your privacy so that nobody attending the webinar can hear what's happening in your office. But you still can ask questions if you would like. If you explore the GoToWebinar interface, there is a questions panel. At any time, you can feel free to type in a question in that questions panel. Now, we will be holding those questions until the very end, but time permitting, we'll see if Kylie can get to a few of those questions before we finish. So with all of that housekeeping, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Kylie Hughes so she can share her knowledge. It's all yours, Kylie.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. I know we're all really busy, so hopefully the next hour will be something that you can obtain some very helpful information regarding developing training packages and programs using MadCap Flare. So during this next hour, we're going to talk about a few different topics. It's not all related to blended learning, but it all comes together to create very nice training packages. So we'll have a chat about, what we're going to cover today. So I'll introduce myself. I'll go through and tell you what my definition of a training program is, because I do know there are lots of different variations for training programs. We'll have a chat about what is a 21st century learner, because that is critical to the success of our program. Then we'll jump in and have a look at the blended learning program and the 9 elements that are inside that one. And I'll show you some examples as well of what it looks like in Flare and the PDF document. Okay, so let's take a look here. So yes, my name is Kylie Hughes. I am a passionate advocate of quality training design and delivery. I've been a MadCap Flare user now for about 4 years, but I've actually been studying, designing and delivering training for close to 2 decades. So about 4 years ago, my workplace did purchase the MadCap suite of programs, and they asked me to create better looking PDF documents. So I had absolutely no MadCap Flare experience at that time whatsoever. So I spent a bit of time researching what it could do so that I could develop a suitable approach. I am a wife, a mother and a pet owner, and I throw that in because I want you to know that I'm pretty much just like you. I don't have any superpowers at all. All right, so let's have a look. If you've been using Microsoft Flare, MadCap Flare now, you'll know that my scope for creating better looking PDF documents, it was pretty much dropped as soon as I worked out what it was MadCap could do. So our end product we've developed now an online help center and a training package, and our end product only actually includes a handful of PDF documents. So products like Flare, Capture, and Central have actually allowed us to transition to a near paperless office that integrates an online help center and that complementary suite of training products. All right, so in my research with MadCap Flare, I did end up designing this purpose-built blended learning model, and that's going to be the primary focus of our hour today. And the reason I spent the time in putting this together is because I didn't want to develop a any kind of product, because you put your blood, sweat, and tears into developing all these wonderful products, and then it doesn't hit the mark with your end users. So I made sure that I did the research and I came up with a nice plan of attack to create those learner-centered programs. Okay, so that's enough about me. Let's take a look at what is a training program to me. Okay, so my training programs are actually divided into 3 different products that I developed using MadCap Flare. The first product is a facilitator guide or a trainer guide. It has a lot of explicit instructions in there for a facilitator to just pick up that guide and run a session. So I know a lot of you might be developing products for contractors that come in and they roll out your training. They don't necessarily see the product with much time leading into that. So that's why these training manuals are or facilitator guides are very detailed in relation to the program, so that you can hire an experienced trainer to come in and roll out your programs. The second component is my learner workbook. So I do use one topic inside MadCap Flare with conditional text so that I'm not having to repeat the content. And you'll notice just by looking at this image, and I will show you some live versions and bigger versions a little bit later on, but you'll notice that the content in my learner workbooks are actually very minimal. I'm not a believer in having the content that you've got in your facilitator guide in a PDF document. And that's because these PDF documents, they date too quickly. And also because I want my learners to be listening to me as a facilitator rather than just reading what's already written in a PDF booklet. So I keep my workbooks very streamlined. It's a resource for the purpose of attending the training, not a resource for them back at their desks when they're actually undertaking the work that we've trained. That's where the Online Help Center comes into play. And it is a HTML output that we have published on our intranet site, and that allows them to use this as a resource back at their desk. So I do embed this Online Help Center in my training packages so that they are shown how to use it, so it becomes their go-to program after when they're applying their skills that they have learned. All right, so I should clarify as well that this session is focused on blended learning, but blended learning isn't the start and end of training redesign. You also need to have a good project management approach to designing your training programs. So you might have heard of the ADDIE model. It's a well-known instructional design model that was originally designed for developing e-learning training. I've taken that model and I've made some tweaks to it, and that has now allowed us to kind of use these 5 stages of the ADDIE model to develop our training programs here. Okay, so if anybody is interested in more information in relation to ADDIE, just let me know and I'd be more than happy to send you some information on that as well. But in particular, there's the 5 stages, and this design and development stages here of the ADDIE model, they're the stages that we really do incorporate the blended learning model into. Okay, right. I think I bore my team with the fact that I keep saying don't put the horse before the cart. Sorry, the cart before the horse. I always say that wrong too every time. Because if you try to jump straight in and just start developing training materials without undertaking the correct process, then what will happen is you'll end up with a product that your users won't use at all. So it is really important that you do take that time to plan out what you're doing. As I mentioned, I've been doing this for close to 2 decades now. And not too long ago, I actually did jump in and started just designing a training program. When we piloted it, it fell apart, and I really, really kicked myself for not following my own advice there and planning it out. Okay, 21st century learners, they are really, really important to what we're going to be developing our training packages for. And that does form part of the analysis stage of the ADDIE model. So that's one thing that we all have in common, is that we're developing these programs for 21st century learners. So I'd like you just to take a quick minute to really think about, well, what does a 21st century learner look like? So if you've got a post-it note there, more than happy for you to jot some things down or just think about it. What is a 21st century learner? What do they look like? Been bounced around now for quite some years. Okay. So normally if I'm delivering training at this point, when I ask you to think about things, I'd have a whiteboard up on my screen and we'd be brainstorming, everybody would be jumping in there and putting in their definitions. I'm a little bit limited to what I can do with that today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you what my research findings tell me about 21st century learners, and then you can compare that with what your idea of a 21st century learner was. So what they're not is school kids, our young school kids that go to school, or millennials. But quite often people will go, oh, I've got a bunch of millennials coming, or young kids straight out of school coming into my training. Not really the definition of a 21st century learner. Okay, so I think the terms millennial, Generation X, Generation Y, all of those kind of generation labels really should be ignored, because you can really start developing a training program tailored at a generation, and I think you're doing a disadvantage to them, because we're all 21st century learners. Everybody that's here today in this session is a 21st learner, because you are here today to learn something. So everybody in your workplaces are 21st century learners. Okay, so for me, a 21st century learner is somebody who has access to all of the resources that are available to us in this modern world, including the internet and our MadCap ware and capture programs. Okay, so what does a 21st century learner want? They want quick access to information. They want it all, and they want it now. Think about TikTok videos. The recommended length for a TikTok video is 9 to 15 seconds, and they're capped at 60 seconds, and they go viral. Okay, TED Talks, which have been around now for quite some time, they're capped at 18 minutes, and the theory behind that 18 minutes is that that is long enough to flesh out an idea, but short enough that the listener can take in, digest, and understand all of the important information that that presenter is sharing. And of course, you've got YouTube. If you think about yourself as a YouTube user, if you're anything like me, you go into YouTube and you look for the quickest video. You want to know how to change the tire on your car? I'm going to watch the video that's a minute. I'm not going to spend the time to watch the 10-minute video. So we want quick access to information. 21st century learners are also quite time poor. We've got a lot going on. And as I mentioned before, we want our answers and we want them now. And I'm going to blame Google for that, because, we just have instant access to information now. So because we're time poor, we want to make sure that the information we're accessing is clear and it's concise. We don't want to read through something like War and Peace just to get to what it is we're looking for. Okay, so as instructional designers, we want to make sure that we provide them only with the relevant information. I want you to think about here now, you want to Google how to make a chocolate cake. So you do a Google, you jump in, you get a blog or you get a website come up and you're scrolling through the blog author or the website designer. They've given you a massive story about how one day they were craving for a piece of chocolate cake and oh my gosh, my grandma's cake, she had a fantastic cake and I really want to make that cake my grandma made, and on and on and on it goes. And you're just scrolling and going, oh my gosh, get to the point, where's the recipe? Where's that link I can click that's just going to take me to the recipe? So our online help centers that we are designing and the content that we're putting inside our training programs needs to kind of take on that philosophy as well. Be clear and concise and give them what they want, or they're going to walk away. All right. I know I've seen before blog articles and web pages. If you're writing those, you might have word limits. Oh my gosh, I really want to throw word limits out the window and outlaw them. If you can say something in 10 words, then don't use 20, because everyone's going to fall asleep, or they're going to click the back button, or if they're using your programs, they're going to throw their hands up in the air in frustration. So clear and concise is really important. And on that note, I attended a webinar many years ago, and this point stuck with me, is be really careful with your subject matter experts. They're subject matter experts for a reason, right? They know a lot. They want to tell you all about everything, how everything works, and they think that everything is important. So as an instructional designer, it's your job to fish through that and really work out what is the critical information that you need to put into your training packages, as well as your online support center. Okay, so yeah, be careful with SMEs. They are critical to getting the content, but you have to really weed through that. Okay, the last thing, or another thing, probably not the last thing, there's probably a lot more out there, but 21st century learners also want available in multiple formats. They learn in lots of different ways. So we need to be including in our training programs content that allows us to show them how to do something. Give them opportunities to read through and learn how to do something, as well as giving them the ability to construct their own learning. Okay, there's some stats out by Atlassian, and I don't know if I've pronounced that properly, so I do apologize to them if I haven't, but their statistics tell me that people remember 80% of what they see, 20% of what they read, and about 10% of content that they hear. So those statistics really do tell me that that old method of delivering training where the facilitator stands up and just talks and talks and talks and has all of the power in the room, definitely not suitable for our 21st century learners. Okay, so that is our 21st century learning. Let's jump in and take a look now at this blended learning model, which is probably the part you're all here for today, but hopefully you've written down some key points in relation to our 21st century learners and a training program. Okay, this blended learning model that I've created, it has been divided into 3 different components. So I've got a design component, a technology component, and a people component. And I should point out that not one component is weighted higher than the other. They should all be looked at consistently and evenly. Okay, so take into account every single element of this particular model. All right, so let's take a look at the design component. So the design component of this model has been broken up into 3 categories. We've got scenario learning, active learning, and micro learning, okay? So let's chat about scenario learning first. So scenario-based learning is I think there's two elements to our scenario-based learning. We've got our contextual scenarios. So that means that the activities that we're having our participants work through, our learners work through, they should be related to the actual activity that they will be doing in real life on the job. If you're developing a program that might make that challenging because your clients might use your software, but they all have a different industry, then you want to use a scenario base that everybody will know. So something really simple to mailing a letter, or actually, not everybody probably knows how to mail a letter these days. So maybe something like making a pizza, that's quite a popular thing if you're Googling how to, develop scenario-based for common situations. So you want to pick a contextual scenario that everybody will understand. Okay. And the second element to the scenario-based learning is your character-based. So using characters throughout your scenarios will really help you simplify the scenario, and it also makes it more personalized, okay? So using characters in your training helps show your learners that there's a real person at the end of our actions, okay? So why is it important? It's important because it increases engagement, it provides relevance to our learners, and it also gives them a safe environment to practice. I have got a link in here, which I can't send you, but there's a link in here to a website. If you Google it, the benefit of scenario-based learning and customer service training, that will give you a little bit more information about it as well. And what should you consider? So I've talked about the contextually relevant and the familiar characters. And I'll share with you an example of some training that I attended recently. I attended some training for a workflow software, okay? So I went there with the purpose of going, hey, how can I incorporate these workflows into our MadCap Flare product and our online help? So I went in with very little knowledge in relation to, process mapping. So that concept was new to me, as well as the software that we were using. Okay, so the training did include scenario-based activities, and that was around car manufacturing. I don't work in the car manufacturing industry, so for me, I had to wrap my head around how Toyota record their parts and do repairs and all that kind of information, as well as the process mapping software. So that was really hard for me, and needless to say, I walked out of that training with a very negative thought about that software. And if I'm being honest with you, I haven't touched it since. So I haven't incorporated process flows into our MadCap programs. I'm waiting for somebody else in my team to work that out for me. So be really careful with the contextualization and the scenario that you're choosing. Also want to chat about characters, using familiar characters. So another example I've got here for you is I used to work in a child protection agency and delivering the training programs for them. And we had characters with just some really random names. So we would be dealing with, families of 5 or 6 different people that had really random names, sometimes really hard to even pronounce names. That added a layer to the training that was just so complex, because not only was I trying to work out how to map these family members together, but I also had to try and remember their names and how to pronounce their names. So what I did there is I actually changed out that scenario so that we were using characters for a TV show, which was The Simpsons. Okay, so I know we've got to be careful of copyright, but everybody knows The Simpsons. And what that did for the training for our learners was, because they know The Simpsons, they know all the family members, they know how they're related, then it actually allowed them to just focus on that functionality of the system. And that had a really positive impact on them back at the job, because it actually corrected data errors that were being created due to that complex situation. So scenario-based learning can have a really positive impact on learners' ability to recall. Okay, so the moral of that story there is, don't let your scenarios confuse your learning objectives. So what does this look like in Flare? And again, I will show you an end project at the end, But in Flare, you're going to use your variables for your character names. And I also recommend creating an icon or a text box that you can use in your facilitator guides there to identify, hey, we're moving into a scenario base. Because it is really important for that facilitator to talk through the scenario, not just let your participants read the scenario, because chances are they might not read the scenario. So having that really stand out in your facilitator workbooks is key. All right, let's have a little chat about active learning now. Active learning is one of my absolute favorite learning theories. It's not by all means new. If you've been in the education industry now for quite some time, you would have heard of this as a constructivist approach to learning. So active learning is where we give our learners the opportunities to construct their own understanding. Okay, and again, really good for our 21st century learners here. It's really important, as I said, for the 21st century learners. It increases their motivation and it helps them develop some problem solving skills. Okay, so active learning is great. Nothing worse than listening to somebody rabbit on for an hour, huh? All right, so what do I need to consider? So when you're creating these active learning opportunities in your training packages, you need to be aware of their pre-existing knowledge so that you can create those scenarios that are learner-centered. You want to build on their experience, so you'll start, at the bottom, and you'll give them activities to work up and develop their skills. Okay, so knowing where they're starting from is really important so that you don't give them something to do that they roll their eyes at you and go, oh my gosh. Right. You will need to be aware of your timings as well, because active learning does take time to develop, to deliver, because you need to give them time to self-explore. Yeah, and of course you need to look at the resources that you have available as well, because they'll determine the types of activities that you can include. So what does this look like in Flare? So in Flare, in our training programs, we will have links to an online help center, and it's one that they'll use back at their desk so that they become familiar with it. And some of those activities might even be, hey, go to the help center, read the content that's on there, or watch the video demonstration that's on there, and give it a crack. Try it. Can you do it? So that's what we'll do in Flare there. We'll have frequent activities in our learner book. So when I show you my facilitator workbooks, you'll see that they're quite visual. And the great thing about these visual prompts is that you can take one look at your training materials and you can go, oh, wow, the trainer is talking for far too long in that part there. I need to make some changes. Okay. So frequent activities, you'll see those in your learner books and your facilitator guides. We'll link off to supporting materials and sites like other websites that will help you out, not just your own company ones. And of course, you need to have really good searching in your online help centers, and that's where micro content can be a real lifesaver. Okay, so that's a bit of a summary of active learning. I could go on for hours and hours about active learning because I absolutely love it. But if you Google it, you'll find a lot on the web as well. All right, let's talk about micro learning now. So micro learning has caught a lot of traction lately. So I've really got to thank COVID for this. This is a really positive thing that's come out of COVID, is this realization that, hey, we should be breaking our content up into smaller bite-sized components. Okay, so again, if you've been around in the education industry for a while, you would know this as chunking. One of the really old languages for this is chunking it into bite-sized pieces. So this is important, as I mentioned, for remote learning now. So if you're working from home or not in the office with your team of people, you are going to find it hard to just sit in front of your computer all day and learn. So this micro learning allows you to break a course up to be delivered either as a full day package, or you can break it up across a period of a week or even, a month, depending on the needs of your workplace. One of the advantages as well of micro-learning is that by breaking things down into smaller components, the knowledge retention of your learners is going to go through the roof, okay? Because you haven't overloaded them with information. And it's also a very efficient way to deliver training, because rather than losing someone off the floor in your workplace for a full day or a full week to go and attend training, they might only need to be away from their desk for half an hour or an hour to learn this one particular component. So it's a lot easier to fit training in and professional development and upskilling in when we can break our courses down into bite-sized pieces. There's another good read here that I've recommended. If you Google everything you want to know about microlearning, but you're too afraid to ask, that is also a good website that kind of explains about microlearning. All right, so things you need to consider when you're designing your training program is your session duration. So do you want it weekly? Do you want it spread out monthly? Do you want it to be a 3-month induction program? What is your delivery medium as well? So we do have a lot of different options available, which I do cover as well in our people element of the blended learning model. We've got prerequisites as well. So if you are going to divide your training program up into bite-sized pieces and it's not all done in the same day, then it needs to be a very clear pathway for your learners so that they are attending and completing those courses in the right order. Okay, so understanding those prerequisites and letting your learners know them is really important, and that structure as well. Okay, so in Flair, what does this look like? So when you're creating your facilitator workbooks, you'll have different topics per chunk or per content. Okay, so lots of different topics inside Flair. You'll have your talk structure set out so that it does follow the correct sequence as well. And the assessment. So this is something exciting that we can add into our Flair programs now with the e-learning elements that MadCap has brought out. So you can include your assessments inside your training packages now. Conditional text is what you're going to be applying as well. Again, text boxes or the use of color for that very visual element, and clear instructions for your learners with links to everywhere they need to go to learn about this particular piece of learning. Okay, so that's our design element. When we're looking at our technology element of our component of the blended learning model, this is divided up into 3 different categories here. So we've got virtual, e-learning, and our multimodal as well. So virtual technology refers to a platform that you're using to deliver your training requirements, particularly in this remote world that we're all living in at the moment. Okay, so in relation to virtual, as I mentioned, it is very, very significant for today's world. It's important that working from home, that we do develop our training packages, taking into account this changed environment that we're living in. So it's important for the working from home. It also provides flexibility as well. So it's a lot easier to attend our training programs when they're remote. We don't have to get to a venue. We don't have to, book a training room or make sure there's a spot available for us to attend training. So it provides us with so much flexibility. And even as a supervisor of a training team, it gives me better uses of my resources, because instead of having 5 trainers deliver my course, across the country, I can have perhaps 1 trainer delivering that course to everybody across the country, so that frees up some resources for me to go and offer other training packages as well. So win-win, I think, for virtual training delivery. So what you need to consider is the usability of the platform that you're using. Okay, so there are programs, lots of programs out there, like we've got WebEx, Teams, and Zoom. It is important that you do identify a platform when you're developing your training program, because you need to include your instructions for your facilitator in there. If you don't, then they might just fall into that nervous habit of talk. Okay, so by including in, hey, in WebEx, I want you to use a breakout room to do this, or in Microsoft Teams, I want you to use the whiteboard functionality to do this. Okay, so understanding your platform that you'll be using to deliver virtual training and writing it in will see significant success for your facilitators. You also need to make sure that the people attending your training know how to use the platform as well. So we do use, in my environment, we use WebEx Training Center. I think it offers a lot more functionality at the moment than what Zoom and Teams do, because Zoom and Teams are meeting-based, not training-based. So I'm sure they're going to improve their functionality, and they'll be competing with WebEx Training quite soon. But what we do, so we have the one program or platform that we use for our training, and for all of our new starters, we spend 1 hour teaching them how to use that platform. So I've created this 1 hour fun session where they're in playing games, using all the functionality of WebEx training, so that then they're good to attend the rest of our training sessions and engage just as effectively as though it was face-to-face training. Okay, so think about what adaptations you need to make to your training to be able to successfully deliver using your virtual platform. Okay, what does it look like in Flare? So I have kind of touched on this already. You're going to include those prompts for your facilitator, telling them how to use that technology. Even in your participant workbooks, your learner workbooks, you want to tell them, hey, now that you've finished this activity, can you give me a tip? Or if you're going to step away from your desk, can you put your coffee cup emoji up, so that way you're facilitating with them just as you would in a face-to-face environment. And of course, have supporting material available for them. So if you do run into some technical issues in using that software that you're using, then we can make sure that they've got a topic that's inside your Flare project or your online help project to help them troubleshoot that efficiently. Okay, so that's our virtual e-learning. So I'm going to encourage you to think outside the box when it comes to e-learning. Okay, I'm not talking about e-learning as one of those modules that you just click, and you might have a little knowledge check where you pick some radio buttons or drag and drop some things. I'm thinking any kind of video. Okay, so any method of video learning. So these can include a video demonstration. They can include simulations, gaming, the traditional e-learning modules, as well as those assessments. Okay, so this is important because it helps you streamline your content. The more a facilitator delivers a session, the more confident they get, the more they learn about the system, and therefore the more they talk about it. So a little bit like our SMEs that I spoke about earlier. So by having one of those complex situations that has the potential to, blow out from a 3-minute conversation to a 10-minute conversation, having a video can actually help you stick to that 3-minute time frame. And it helps it's more succinct. It's that clear and concise message that our 21st century learners want. Okay. Gamification, it's really popular. You might be sitting there rolling your eyes or going, oh no, my workplaces really don't like gamification. They just don't want it. I was told the same thing. And it turned out that it was just the way we were using gamification that they didn't like. So I personally, I like gamification from the perspective of reviews. Okay, so at the end of the training session, we've covered lots and lots of things. Let's play a game like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? or The Chase or some kind of, Jeopardy, something like that, because it's fun. It can be very competitive, even though there's no prize. But everybody then walks out of your training sessions and goes, yeah, that was a really good session, rather than just me going, okay, this is what we covered today. And it's also a good indicator as well that, oh, wow, that poor, Freddie, he really struggled with something, so I've got to give him some more follow-up support. Okay, so gamification, if it's done right, is very successful. Okay, and one of the other things about the using videos as well is that it encourages and allows us to use our micro-learning more efficiently. All right, what do you need to consider? Publishing restrictions. Okay, so I know if I embed a video in my Flare project and I try to publish to SharePoint, I get size restrictions. So I have to put it in SharePoint before I can put it in Flare. So think about your publishing restrictions like that. Effort in versus effort out. So, are you getting the reward that you're looking for in this? If you're using voiceovers in your video, are you going to have to change the person who records that voice every time you want to make tweaks? And is it value added? So sometimes we use technology just for the sake of using technology. No, make sure it adds value. All right. And of course, access to any equipment that is needed as well. So, you've got to have access to speakers, and sometimes sharing audio in a virtual world, if you're using WebEx or Teams, that can be quite a challenge as well. So make sure you consider all of those before you go off and design a wonderful, articulate or captivate e-learning game. Okay, so in Flare, you'll be able to, I have a video text box, so it's very clear that my facilitator is ready to click and play a video. You'll have your embedded multimedia, so Flare makes that very easy to embed your videos. And even in your online help center, you might have your own kind of YouTube channel where you just have your short 1-minute videos that people can access quite easy. All right, so that's e-learning. Multimodal. Multimodal is using a variety of methods to deliver information. So I do have this under the technology banner because you need technology sometimes to be able to create these products. Okay, so multimodal can include pictures, infographics, music, speech, your printed text, and your hands-on activities, etc. Okay, so this is really important for us because it really caters for all the different learning styles, and they are very important. They're a key component of our adult learning principles. Okay, so by having these different elements, you're going to be engaging our learners and providing change of state activities. So I get that you've been listening to me now for a good, 35 minutes, and it's probably really hard for you to just listen to me. So I wouldn't normally deliver training like this. I'd be normally very active. I'd be having you throw comments in the chat, and I'd be developing this around our conversations. So change of state activities will bring your learners back in if their mind has wandered. Okay, so that's why it's also good to change out, and particularly remote learning as well. You're isolated, you're on your own. It's easy to get distracted by your emails, and then you're doing a great job as a facilitator. You're telling everybody what they need to know, and they're over here on the side checking their emails and seeing how work is going because we're stressed about what's going on back at our desk. So definitely very important there to include these different elements to create that learner-centered training program. All right, what do I need to consider? Limitations working from home, what resources you have available to create some of these items, and again, how's it going to impact your timing? There's a good read called 35 Multimodal Learning Strategies and Examples. If you want to Google that, that will give you some ideas on how to embed it. But in Flare, you're going to, again, have that content separated. So think about your page layout. You're going to use images and image maps, thumbnails, and also embed your videos. Okay. So you can see how all these elements of the blended learning model all come together. They can't be looked at in isolation. All right, I want to jump into our people element here. So people, the component of our blended learning model, it's facilitated, peer-to-peer, and self-directed. Okay, so this facilitated is where you've got somebody guiding the training. And again, in our COVID environment, it definitely looks very different because there's no longer that preference for being in a face-to-face classroom environment. Okay, so it's important. I still think you need to have facilitated training. E-learning is not a replacement for facilitated training. I remember when COVID hit, I had somebody in my team going, "Oh, Kylie, can I learn how to articulate, use Articulate, because I really think we're gonna stop face-to-face training now, right, and just deliver e-learning." Like, no way. And I've not done that with any of our training packages. It is still now delivered face-to-face via WebEx, and we don't actually use cameras. So, and it's still effective training delivery. So with the people element, it's critical sometimes to your outcome. You can't learn everything in e-learning. And let's be honest, we've all done an e-learning course where we're just click, 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 right? And then you get a test at the end and you go, oh no, and you have to do that test 3 times to pass because you didn't read it. Yeah, that is why I think you can't replace e-learning. You can't replace face-to-face with e-learning, okay? Another positive of that facilitated training is that it allows the facilitator to differentiate the learning, okay? So you can make tweaks and changes to suit perhaps learning disabilities for people that you have in your session, okay? It provides the participants, your learners, with the opportunity to engage and ask questions at the point they need to ask that question, okay? And of course, you can tailor support. All right, so what should I consider? Again, your delivery platform, how are you doing it? What resources you have available, whether or not there's less flexibility and information overload, okay? I'm just going through this quickly because I really want to get to my Flare products. Okay, so what does it look like in Flare? Again, the use of text boxes and visual elements and prompts for learners. I'm going to quickly go through peer-to-peer here. So peer-to-peer is how you can use other learners in your training as well as what comes after the training. So I'm a big believer that a training program develops a capability, okay? Competency comes with on-the-job training and support. And this is why we need to actually provide our learners with that support to develop that competency. Okay, so by using our peers, it creates a supportive environment, a feeling of being connected to our teams, the team environment, as well as professional development opportunities for people who might be interested in becoming facilitators or becoming leaders. And also it reduces errors. Okay, what should I consider? So again, access, that's a big thing. How do I get access to my peers and support? What kind of mentor or buddy am I going to give this person? Do they have the right experience as well as the right personality and skills to be able to mentor that person? And of course, compatibility. Sometimes you do need to consider personality types and whether or not those people that you're going to put together will be able to successfully work together. Okay. And what does it look like in Flare? So in your online help center, you'll have a contact list so that if they forget, they get stuck, and you'll have documented support model as well. All right, in the self-directed element, self-directed is where you place the emphasis of the learning on developing competencies with the learner, okay? We are working in adult learning, so really we have to be accountable for our own learning, okay? It's not up to my leader to train me, it's up to me to take the initiative to understand what it is I need and how I can get that. So that improves motivation and it also reduces impact on leaders' time as well. You need to consider again access to peers and support. What kind of support tool are you going to give them to be able to successfully be self-directed? So we use a learning passport. It has a list of the learning objectives that were covered during training. And after training, they'll go through and tick off how comfortable they are with the different learning objectives that were covered during the training. And that then gives them a nice idea of, right, this is where I need to focus on when I get back to my desk. I need to be able to learn a little bit more about this topic here. And to do that, I'm going to go and speak to my peer, or I'm going to go into a training environment and I'm going to practice things. So give them a tool to help them identify what it is they don't know. Okay, and then of course you need to consider what level of guidance will be required for them. And that learning passport will actually really help them pick the right person. Okay, so what does it look like in Flare? So as I mentioned, they really do need to have some kind of online platform to be able to go to ask all of their questions, check all their answers, and see all of their videos. Because as I mentioned, the learner's workbook, it doesn't have that content because PDF documents become out of date. So having an online platform allows them to have regular updated information. All right, so that was a lot very quickly in relation to the blended learning model. I do want to very quickly show you what that looks like in a PDF document. So hopefully now you're seeing my PDF document. Let's pretend that has a very nice cover page. In my facilitator's workbook, I do have some trainer information here. So everything that a trainer needs to know before they develop a course, some little hints and tips there on questions that they should be asking along the way, particularly using virtual platforms. You can't see your people. We've got icons. So I've been mentioning text boxes and icons throughout this session. I have text boxes built into my Flare project for each one of these. We have capability evaluations and then how to address questions. Okay, so this is what a chapter is. This is an example training guide on how to use one of those online help centers. So of course your learning objectives, because they're going to dictate your content, what resources are needed, and a high level list of what a trainer does. And then you can see my, my microlearning, my chunking is coming into play here because I've got these different areas per element that they're learning, okay, or that I'm covering as a facilitator. And it just makes it very easy for a facilitator to follow along with, as well as learn the content. So you can see here at this point, we're going to give a handout. Okay, I'm going to use a PowerPoint slide. There's a participant activity that needs to be done here, and special notes for the trainer. So, hey, send a link off to the training environment in the chat. Okay, and then this is what a participant activity looks like. Okay, I'll just scroll down to another topic so you can see there, very similar look and feel. I do put in thumbnails of a PowerPoint presentation, but this one here is a good example of a participant activity. And I will admit this was created before the new version of Flare. So now that Flare has got those multiple choice questions and those e-learning components, I need to get in there and upgrade my Flare so that I can actually make these a lot easier for me to manage as an instructional designer. Very excited by that, and I can't wait until that part of Flare grows. Okay, so that is a bit of an example there of a whiteboard activity. I love doing whiteboard activities. That's an example of what the trainer guide looks like. Here is what it would look like for a participant. So it is stripped down. I want them to make their own notes. So we've actually started converting these to editable PDF documents because, you know, we want to save the environment. We don't want to print everything. So we've been using Adobe to actually put in our editable text boxes here. Obviously, I haven't done that on this one. But yeah, I want them to make their own notes because that's active learning. I'm keeping them on task. So one of my favorite sayings is for virtual learning is you want your learners multitasking on task, not off checking their emails. So by having these elements written into their participant workbook where they actually have to listen to what you're saying, maybe write down some notes, draw some diagrams, they are active learning and they are multitasking on task. Okay, here's my activity. So again, I need to upgrade my Flare so that I can put in my radio buttons there. So yes, it's a very, I do have these. How confident are you at the end of each chapter? That will link into their learning passport, so they can go, oh, I only put 2 stars on that one. I need to spend some more time on this area here. Okay, so that is what my participant workbook look like. And an example, I've got a couple minutes left, an example here of what a online help center could look like for you. I mean, I've used a MadCap Flair help center to deliver today's training, so hopefully that's given you some ideas as well. But you can see here, taking into account all of the things that I've got in the blended learning model. I've got my infographic here where you can probably just see there where my little cursor is. That's my image map that I've got in Flair with the little hovers there. I use drop downs. Okay, probably don't have any content in there. Embed my videos. Ignore the size of that picture, although I think it looks pretty cool. And my topic layout, you can see my topic layout is very clean, it's very clear, and it's very precise. I use the thumbnail so that the images don't overtake the screen. And again, if I've used MadCap Capture to do this image, it wouldn't look as messy as this. I just didn't have Capture installed on this device. So that is a bit of an example. I'm going to bring up my Flair project for you very quickly to show you the conditional text that I've got in here. So I do have, this is the project that I've just used to deliver in my, no, I've got a copy here somewhere, trainer guide template. Okay, all right, so you can see in here, I do use my, I can't remember what that's called, concepts, so that we can use a filter. Down the side here, I've got my red bars, but that's indicating my conditional text. So anything that's in red won't be included in my participant workbook. Okay, I got another color, purple. Anything that's purple, then that won't be included in my trainer guide. My trainer doesn't need to make notes, or if they do, they can scribble them on the side. Okay, so using that conditional text allows you to have that repeatable content. And it's a game changer, it's a lifesaver. You don't have an activity written in a trainer guide that says, oh, go and count the apples. And then in the participant workbook, it says, go and count the oranges. Like it just avoids that inconsistency, and it makes it so much easier to update. You'll see as well when I push my drop down, I have got the call out. So all of those little elements that I'm breaking up into my training materials, I've created those text boxes, and that's what they kind of look like here. So I include them all in my template topic and take out what I don't need. All right, I've got 3 minutes, and I'm really, really sorry that it's pushed to the point. So hopefully that was valuable for you. If you want a copy of this particular Flair project, let me know. I'm more than happy to zip it up and send it off. No problems at all. Okay. I did talk a lot, so I don't know if we've got any time for questions.
All right, Mike Hamilton jumping back in. Thank you, Kylie. That was amazing. I believe there was one pending question that came in. If you're able to pull that up in your interface, great. Otherwise, I can just read it to you if you prefer.
Okay, so I'm looking at it here. So is ILT the only way you're delivering training? Any e-learning simulations or multimedia? So hopefully I did address that, absolutely. I think you need to include all elements of those, what was listed in that blended learning model in one training package. So include the videos where you can. I like to use simulations as well to replicate training environments, because sometimes training environments can be really muddled or they have bugs in them. You create simulations instead, and it just works so smoothly. So hopefully that answered that question there. Oh yes, excellent, thanks, Leah. All right, and thank you, Albert, that's really nice feedback. Okay. Well, if you do have any other questions, oh, yep, happy to email it. If you want to put your email address in the chat, or shall I send the email through to the project to you, Mike?
Yeah, if you forward the project over to us, we can actually add it as a downloadable component when we post the recording.
Excellent. I will definitely do that then. And I just want to point out that my background is mostly instructional design. So if you come from the other side where you are a Flair expert, I think, you probably look at some of my elements and go, oh my gosh, why did she use the table? It's because I don't know how to use divs. So more than happy to trade knowledge with people. If you get my training package and go, hey, Kylie, I've tweaked this for you, take a look at it, please do so. Happy to network and barter skills with people.
All right, well, I think we've handled all the questions that were posted, and we are right on the hour. So I want to be sensitive if people have other meetings they have to run off to. So as kind of the MC, I want to thank everybody for attending, and a big thank you to Kylie. This was a great presentation. But with that, I think we are going to wrap up. Thank you, everybody. Watch your inboxes. As soon as we have everything posted, the recording and the downloadable files, you should receive an email. With that, thank you so much. Everybody have a great rest of your day.